is Jeff Holmes, and my occupation was I was an insurance underwriter out of Oradell, New Jersey. So we specialized in travel related products.
My name is Jim Kelly, and I was a detective in the street crime unit in New York City Police Department. I was up early, and I don't know why, because I watched the Giant game with my partner the night before. But it was normal morning. It was beautiful out, and I was supposed to be in work at 5:30. I was up in my kitchen, and actually Uncle Sean called me. I said,
Oh,
"Do you have the TV on?" I said, "No," and he said, "Turn the TV on." So I turned it on. I saw it. It was on every channel, obviously by then. So yeah, it was kind of weird. Like at the time, no one knew, obviously the severity or the magnitude of what was going on. It was just, a plane. They were actually um, suggesting it might be a small plane. Just didn't, in error, just hit the building. And as we were talking, the second plane hit.
mhm.
So that is when it's like, oh no. Then really, it just then that's not an accident. I knew right away, just on my own experience, that certainly, like other people, that was not an accident.
First thing in the morning when I was in my office, one of my coworkers' wives called and said was looking for him, and she was in the South Tower, and she said that there was something that was going on in the other tower, and they were being evacuated. But that if she could, as soon as her husband came in, if I could have her give her a call. So that's how I found out. Afterwards, I did call my wife, and she confirmed that there was something going on at the towers. But at that time, it was unknown when I talked to her. But I did know that there was something bad going on in the towers.
I want to say minutes after the second plane hit, my partner Eddie Drum called me. It said, obviously we're going down.
Mhm.
So I want to say within a half hour we were packed up. He had picked me up, and then we had gotten an alert to report anyway from our command. They put out a citywide alert that everybody was getting recalled to come back to work.
And so we immediately became very personally involved because of her knowing that she was in there. Also, because many of our coworkers from other industry, from other companies, they're not coworkers from my company, but they were co-industry workers, were in that building. So we started hearing questions. We started getting calls. Have you heard from this person? Have you heard from that person? What's going on? And so we had heard a lot of information that way. And so obviously everyone became very vested because we were worried about Dave's wife at that time. We all kind of got around Dave because we knew his wife was in there. He he lived in the city, so we had two young kids. So the first thing was how do we get him back in? He was an old army guy, so he was definitely cooler. Like I mentioned that I took his call from his wife. He came in probably a few minutes after I got off the phone with her, and him and I sat down and talked. I'm like, Dave, you really got to call your wife. Unfortunately for him, he never got a chance to talk to her, so that was unfortunate. It's always kind of stuck with me that, you know, out of our office, I was the last one I talked to her before, he did.
What can you remember about the rest of that day?
Whew, I remember everything. It was obviously a terrible day. We got down there, I want to say about 12:30 in the afternoon. And it was just, we got down to the west side. I had called actually Uncle Danny. I just said, hey, listen, because I told, Karen and Mima and Pop that I was on Randall's Island still and not to worry, we're on standby, but we got sent down. So I just let Danny know just in case something happened, where it's going to be. So we had gone to, we got sent to the South Tower. We found out one of our, sorry, sorry, uh, one of the guys I worked with in street crime had gone to ESU, and he was missing. So we, that's where he was last seen. So that's where we went.
People are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess, because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
The image of the post was probably, which was the following day, was ingrained in my head, which was a picture of somebody who was jumping off the building, and it actually was on the front page of the post, and that kind of leaves you just, I was up in the building at 101 floors. You look down, you're like, all you can think of is how hot must it have been, how uncomfortable must it have been to decide that I'm going to jump 101 floors.
We were there for the next 2 weeks, basically doing like 16-hour shifts, doing bucket brigade and, kind of identifying things and items in there and stuff like that. I mean, there were some really good moments that day. Like I saw two of my best friends. Your mom knows one, Kevin Rafter, and that was great. Billy Madigan, Mike Ryan. These guys were all firemen or ESU guys. So it was good to see, people, because they were when we first got there, they were saying that there was thousands of cops and firemen, missing and everything. So that was pretty decent. Um, then just going the days after were just kind of surreal. It was just everything was still smoking, and fires were still burning for days and days, and it was just kind of obviously nobody was really kind of found after the first like 17, 18 hours. So it was just more like recovery and um, you know sadness.
The person that I was sitting next to, and I knew him from my days at Reliance National, because he came in after, were that he described it that he had to get off the stairwell because he was out of breath. Then the plane hit, so he was above it or around it, or however he survived. And he only remembers that a Korean person in a white shirt grabbed him and they walked down the stairs. And one of the only stairwells that were open.
Wow.
And unfortunately, everybody else that he was with passed that didn't evacuate lower. So he had a hard time. When I saw him at the funeral, he's like, he had a lot of jet fuel burns from not over his body, but just from the smell of it. So he had a hard time recovering from all that.
Well, it was scary, because it was just we got down there maybe like 2.5 hours after the second tower fell, um, and it was like a war zone. I mean, it was just you heard explosions. There was gas lines blowing up here, there. There was papers still flying in the air. There was, I mean, obviously dust all over the place. Um, it was scary, and then we had a job to do. We had to find the ESU trucks because they had like long weapons in them, rifles and stuff,
Mhm.
and they wanted us to secure them. So we were at one point, me and my partner, right at the base of 7, that wound up going down later that day, and we were a block away when it went down. So we wound up running from that building at that point shortly in the afternoon, and that was not as big as the two towers at first, but that was pretty wild. The dust bowl running, and you're just covered in everything, and it was scary. It was very, very scary for the first few hours, and then we weren't finding anybody, so that was kind of a little depressing. And then we heard someone was trapped in a subway, and we got bolt cutters and cut down the gates to get in, and you climbing over rubble and kind of bodies, but no survivors. So that was a little tough.
Mhm.
But going home that night was real important because my family obviously everybody was here, and very supportive, obviously.
We had to start traveling again. And the procedures, the travel after 9/11 changed dramatically. Now there were steel doors on cockpit. The cockpit doors are made of steel. There was no entry. When I flew shortly after 9/11, you couldn't get up. You couldn't get up
Oh, you
and
couldn't?
you couldn't get up and move around. So I had flown into DC not that long after that,
Wow.
and you could not get up. So you had to stay in your seat. Uh, everybody was stereotyping each other, and it was difficult. TSA pre-check started very, very heavy. So you now all of a sudden you couldn't carry this, you couldn't carry that. Then there was an incident not that long after that where there was somebody put a bomb in a shoe, or a potential bomb in a shoe. That now you had to take your shoes off. I mean, it was one of those. It changed the way the travel worked. So what I do is travel insurance. We had to start writing coverage for it, not excluding it. we now needed to get people comfortable saying, if something happens like this, we're going to cover you. So it created a rush of us having to change all of our products. At the same time, we were unfortunately paying claims for people we knew. That was hard. So you get a claim, you understand it, where they died, and so this person died in this tower, or this person died on the ground, and so that was those are tough claims to see because you knew them.
Of course.